Mr. Beard here with your class recap for November 4th, 2011. We finally get a chance to talk about the Odyssey and get our hands on the epic and begin reading it. We started today at the beginning. Before we get into any of Odysseus' story, we need to talk about the invocation of the muse. When you talk about muses in Greek mythology, you're talking about any one of the 9 goddesses of the arts, of the literature, science, so forth. Today, when you hear the term muse, you're either talking about the band or the spirit of inspiration that comes when you're trying to do something artistic. An example of a muse in art inspiring this young lady to play the lyre. Homer addressed his invocation or his request to be inspired to Calliope. Calliope, the muse of epic poetry. As you can see here, she's actually got a copy of the Odyssey because the ancients believed that she was the direct inspiration for Homer as he composed his epic poem. As you can see here at the beginning, he says, "Sing in me, muse, and through me tell the story." He's requesting not just to be inspired by the muse, but he's letting his listeners know right from the beginning that he's working in the poetic tradition of epic poetry. We see this throughout the centuries, that when a poet or an author wants to show that they're working in this device or this poetic form, they begin with an invocation of the muse and request a very formal request to be inspired and to tell a great story. After we talked about the muse and the tradition of the invocation of the muse, we actually went ahead and read Homer's invocation of the muse, Calliope. Next, we actually get to see Odysseus. When our story begins, Odysseus is in a boat, alone, headed for Phaeacia. This is an actual literary device. It is called Medias Res. Begins in the middle. It means it begins in the middle. Our story actually begins in the middle. Odysseus has actually been journeying his way home for 10 years at this point. He has been in the recent captivity of the goddess Calypso as her sort of confined lover, confined to that island where she lived, and now he's telling his story. He's relating his tale to the king of Phaeacia, telling the trials and tribulations he has had to endure on his way home. One of the first stories he tells us is of the land of the Lotus Eaters. If you've ever seen the movie version of The Lightning Thief, you know that a lotus is a plant that makes you want to just sit and do nothing. You forget about all the troubles you have in the world, all of your desires and ambition just fade away, and you just want to sit and just enjoy that plant and do nothing else. After reading about the Lotus Eaters in the Odyssey, we then composed our own modern examples of lotus-type productivity sappers, or things that steal our productivity. Students drew their own artistic rendering of the lotus plant. As you can see, here's a student example, and then listed some modern lotus-type things in our modern world. One, the most common, of course, is drugs. Others, things we do on the computers, social networking, sitting there IMing your friends, and other things we do that distract us and make us want to sit and do nothing is, of course, television. Video games were another common example as well. And we ended today's lesson in the land of the Lotus Eaters. Next, we get to tackle the Cyclops.